Hello everyone, and welcome to my hardcore WoW Classic Mage AOE leveling guide. In this guide I'll be talking about many different tips and tricks that you gotta learn before you attempt to AOE, the talent tree and at what level I pick each talent, and last but not least, all the different locations I use all the way up to level 60. So before you run in and get yourself killed on your first pull, then I would highly recommend you to watch all the different tips and tricks that I'm about to share with you. By learning these things, then you will quickly also learn how to master a mage and how to AOE without dying. So in the first part of this video, I will be talking about some important mechanics to know about, how I use my mage spells, and also some tips and tricks that will help you level up even faster. The first important mechanic to know about is meleeway, also known as leeway. This is where the creature you are fighting can hit you from a far distance, for example if you jump or if you're strafing. Leeway will only start to trigger whenever both of you are in motion. If you backpedal, stand still, or you rooted the target, for example with your Frost Nova, well then this will not start to trigger. So as you can see right here, I'm able to backpedal and kite the target without being hit. If I was however jumping or strafing to the left or to the right, then I all of a sudden would also start to take damage. So this is an important mechanic to know about when you pull many enemies, because if you strafe or jump and you're close to the enemies, then you might also die. Another important mechanic to know about is Dazed. Dazed will reduce your movement speed by 50% for 4 seconds. This can trigger whenever you turn your back against the targets. However, we can easily prevent this from happening just by turning our face against the targets. That's why backpedaling kiting is a good decision, as you're not getting dazed this way, and you can control the leeway and on top of this also be able to use your abilities at the same time. So as long as you make sure you don't jump, strafe or turn your back against the targets whenever you're close to them, well then you will also be increasing your survivability chances by a lot. Another thing I find mandatory to do as a mage is to make sure you level up your first aid. So when you're at low health, you can for example Frost Nova, use a bandage and resume the fight. Another thing that can also cause you to die is that you're not aware of your buffs. For example ice and frost armor that increases your armor but also slows any target that hits you. Therefore I also like to use the add-on Weak Aura. This add-on can track many different spells in the game. In my case I've set it to warn me whenever I no longer have an active armor. So if I forget to pay attention to my buff, well then I'll also be warned whenever it's no longer active. So at this point I guess we're also ready to talk about the different mage spells, how I use them, but also what I do in case I make a mistake. Ice Block is a talent you can choose at level 30. When you're ice blocked, you will also prevent any damage taken. It will last for 10 seconds, but you can cancel it at any time. Super useful if you for example have a debuff, or if it's difficult for you to stack the creatures. Then you can use your Ice Block, wait for them to be stacked, Frost Nova and run away. But what could also happen is that you get some distance after the Frost Nova and then you accidentally pull another creature. This is where your polymorph also becomes handy. What I would do next is to get some more distance and then I would be ready to channel a blizzard. This blizzard I would start channeling the moment all the other creatures is right next to the polymorph target, and then I would channel it on top of all of them together so I could easily apply a slow. What you can do next is to use a Frost Nova if the cooldown is ready, or you could wait for the blizzard slow to also be gone. By then you would be casting your Cone of Cold, because if you cast your Cone of Cold too fast, then the slow effect will not be applied, as the blizzard slow effect is more effective. What happens here is that one of the targets also resists my Frost Nova. When this happens, then you have two options, either to run away and reset, or you can use your Cold Snap to reset all your frost cooldowns, and then you can cast a new Nova. So now we're finally able to kill these humanoid targets, right? Nah, not really, because there's an object preventing us from doing this. This object causes all the enemies to walk in different directions, and this is super bad when you AoE farm. So once again I wait for the blizzard slow to expire before I cast my Cone of Cold. But what happens next is that now I'm almost out of mana, so what I can do is to for example use a Frost Nova followed by a Evocation. When I channel this spell I also regen a lot of mana, which can be super useful in case you would like to go for the kill instead of resetting the fight. Whenever you put yourself into a situation where you can't really continue to backpedal, then your only option is pretty much just to use your blink. Whenever you use your blink, you will also teleport 20 yards in front of the way you're looking, allowing yourself to get out of a sticky situation. But when some enemies get to low health, they will also start to flee. This can be so dangerous in case they get some distance and accidentally pull more enemies. So what I usually do to prevent this is to use a Frost Nova, and then I try to finish them off. With only one target remaining, and me being on low mana, then it's definitely best to choose to pull him off the target and reset the fight. Here's another quick tip. When you level up your mage, you will also unlock new ranks of the same spell. But instead of always using the highest rank, for example Blizzard, then you can use the lowest rank just to apply the slow effect. The duration of the slow is not going to be reduced by using a lower rank, it's only the damage. So once you have applied the slow effect, then you can use a higher rank to do more damage. This is also the exact same with your Cone of Cold and Frost Nova. The slow and root duration will be the exact same, it's just the damage that will be different. And when I use a Frost Nova, then I always use rank 1. You should never use the highest rank, because the damage it does is next to nothing. It's better to save the mana for something else. For example, casting your Cone of Cold. The slow duration lasts longer compared to the cooldown, so you can keep a permanent slow on the enemies. So far, you have learned how to kite and survive if you make a mistake, but now we should also learn how to finish off the targets. So after channeling my first Blizzard, I make sure never to move my mouse. By doing this, I can now also start preparing a second Blizzard, but because I didn't move the mouse, then I can also see the green circle, so where the first Blizzard is currently hitting. By doing this, you always make sure you also have a slow effect on the closest target, and the moment this target is also out of the circle, then you can place a new Blizzard. In case you don't have enough mana for a third Blizzard, then what you can do is to Frost Nova, either use a Cone of Cold, or maybe even a Flame Strike into Cone of Cold for a huge burst. Or another option would be to spam your Arcane Explosion. So these things you can do to deal a high amount of damage and kill the targets. Before I talk about the talent tree I use, then I would like to highlight some tips and tricks that will improve your leveling as a mage. In some of the different main cities, for example Stormwind City, Ironforge, Undercity and Orgrimmar, you can purchase white wands. Having a wand early on is going to be important, especially if you go out of mana, then you can still continue to do damage to, for example, finish off a target. Or you could go to the auction house and purchase a lesser or greater magic wand. There's usually plenty of these on the auction house, and the price are also super cheap. This is because people level up enchanting by crafting these wands, so when many people level up this profession, then the wands will also be cheap. When I'm about to start AoE farming, then I also like to scan the auction house for items that is called Eagle. These provides a lot of stamina and intellect, the best stats as an AoE mage. With a big health and mana pool, you will be able to make mistakes and still recover. For example, being able to be hit by the enemies without instantly dying, or casting many blizzards without going out of mana. If you find it difficult to get these items, then another option would be to go for items called stamina or intellect. Just make sure you mix it up so you don't only go for one of these stats. Another good thing to do is to purchase mana and healing potions. When people level up alchemy, they will craft a lot of these to level up the profession, and therefore you can usually also find them quite cheap on the auction house. This is also the same case with many different kind of food buffs. When people level up cooking, they also tend to post it on the auction house. And while you're here, why not also check out the different scrolls? You might be able to get them quite cheap. These will increase your stamina, spirit and armor. All quite useful for when you AoE farm. If you have made it so far and you're still watching the video, then you might definitely also enjoy the next trick. When you're level 40 or higher, you can craft different portals. These can be used in combat. So let's say it's going to be the first time you're going to attempt an AoE pull at a new area, then having a backup portal is a good decision. If you make a mistake and you can't really get away, well, then you always have your portal that can be used in combat, allowing you to escape and not die. This will of course only benefit those of you that will play a hardcore mage where you only have one life. When I AoE farm at an area with many different patrols, then what I do is either to take them down or mark them. So if the patrol is for example behind an object or inside a building, then I'll still be able to track it. Super useful when you AoE farm. What you might also encounter is a spellcaster at the group that you need to kill. What I tend to do is just to burst it down, and when the other creatures get close to me, then I'll just use a Frost Nova. Then I reset the fight and I go again, but this time without a caster. As a mage, you can conjure your own food and water, but at level 25 I always go to a vendor to purchase sweet nectar. This is because the water that I will be able to conjure at level 25 is still only going to be the level 15 version, so for the next couple of levels I will just purchase the water until I unlock the right rank. And yes, I also do this at level 35 and 45. So what talent tree will I use when I level up as an AoE mage? First I will show you the talents I choose all the way up to level 22, so you're also ready to AoE farm. The first 3 points are spent into elemental precision to reduce the enemy target's frost and fire resistance by 6%. As you're going to AoE, then there's no reason to spend points into single target damage. It's way better just to get a bit more armor. Ice Shards is currently a no-go, and Frostbite is at any time a no-go. This is because you might randomly all of a sudden also root one enemy, and this is super bad when you're for example AoE farm and you like to stack them together. You don't want them to be split in different groups. Instead you should spend your points into improved Frost Nova and also Permafrost. Both of these talents will help you a lot when you need to AoE farm. Some of you might have noticed that I'm only level 21 on this character, and this is because it's also possible to AoE farm as a level 21 mage. It's just a lot more difficult. But all your remaining points, no matter if you're level 21 or 22, should be spent into improved Blizzard. As I continue to level up my mage, I'll slowly also unlock more talent points, and these talent points I'll spend the following way. And by the time I reaches level 60, my talent tree will also end up looking like this. Before I share the different locations where I AoE farm from level 22 and all the way up to 60, then I would also like to show you how you can easily farm before you get your Blizzard. At level 14 you unlock Arcane Explosion, and at level 16 Flame Strike. By this point you are now also ready to start AoE farming, because you can actually do quite decent AoE damage. It will of course not be big pulls, but instead of killing one enemy, then you will be able to take down 3 or 4 enemies at the same time. All you gotta do is to stack them together, use your Frost Nova, followed by Flame Strike, and then spam your Arcane Explosion. I would also recommend you to either have healing or mana potions in case your Frost Nova is being resisted or you run out of mana because you spam your Arcane Explosion. If you also have to deal with a ranged target, then what I usually do is just to run close to this target, because now it will no longer be able to use its range attacks. Instead, it will also be fighting in melee range, and now I stack them together and do my AoE. Here I also end up using a healing potion because I take a lot of damage. What you could also do when you use your Frost Nova is to use a bandage to recover. Alright, so at level 22 the rotation will be a lot different. You need to stack the creatures together perfectly, use a Frost Nova and get as max distance as possible, so you're still in range to cast a Blizzard. Because you're so far away, then you will also be able to cast 2 Blizzards in a row, and by the time that the enemies also get close to you, then there will no longer be a cooldown on your Frost Nova. And depending on your mana, then you can either finish them off with a Flame Strike, Arcane Explosion, or maybe even a Blizzard. So now is also the time for me to show you all the different locations I use in between level 22 to 60. The first spot takes place in Wetlands, and you can start doing this at around level 22 or 23. This is mainly an alliance spot, as Horde has to run way too far. One thing you gotta be aware of is that in one of these camps there will also be a caster, so I highly recommend you to take it out, reset the fight, and then go again. So as a level 22 Horde player, you could instead go to this location in Hillspread Foothills. This spot is not as amazing as the alliance one, and there's also going to be casters, but it is a way for you to level up at least one more level before you will get an amazing spot. At level 23, the Alliance has a couple of options to continue leveling. Either this spot in Duskwood, where you're killing skeletons. It could also be the Norse that you can continue killing in Red Ridge. This you can do all the way up to level 27. Or you could for example be killing these raptors in Wetlands. It also starts at level 23. So as a level 23 Horde, you can go to this location in Hillspread Foothills. You can easily stay here all the way up to level 28. Just remember, at level 26 you also unlock Cone of Cold, so make sure to go back to the trainer to train this. This is also the same case before the Alliance start this location at level 26. Make sure to train your Cone of Cold, it's going to be super important. When you reach level 27, you could then swap to this location in Duskwood as well. I usually kill these walk-ins for quite a few levels, but at level 29 I also like to swap to another location. This is in Hillspread Foothills. At this location you will find many different yetis, and there's even a cave where you can find additional ones. You can stay here from around 29 to 33. At level 29, Alliance can always just go back to the walk-ins, also because there's even yet another area where the creatures is higher level. And in the cave, you will also find additional walk-ins. By this point, you should also be level 30, so remember to pick the talent Ice Block. As a Horde, you also have a unique option, because you can finally go to this farm where there's many different creatures you can slay at the same time, so your leveling speed will definitely increase. By the time you feel like you have also killed enough walk-ins as an Alliance player, then it's probably time for you to swap to this farm in Arathi Highlands. You can start this at around 32 or 33 and continue all the way up to 37. Another option would be to go to Alterac Mountains and kill the Syndicates or the different lions. This can be done all the way up to level 37. The reason why I prefer to get to 37 is because by then I can start farming the different Murlocs in Duskwallow Marsh. This spot is insane, and you can stay here all the way up to 42. Just remember to go back and train your mount at level 40 if it's an option. At level 40 you can also go to Daenerys instead. Remember, at this level you can also choose an amazing talent, Ice Barrier. This is mandatory to choose as it increases your chance of surviving. If you're already in Daenerys, then you don't really have to travel that far, because the next spot is also in Daenerys, and this starts at level 43. And the amazing part about this is that you can AoE farm so many creatures at the same time. The experience you gain here is good enough for you to also stay here all the way up to level 50. At level 50, you will swap to this location in Western Plaguelands. You are probably already familiar with this spot if you watched the tips and tricks section. But nonetheless, Western Plaguelands is an amazing zone for AoE farming, because the moment you're done with this location, then you just move a bit north where you can start at level 52. And here I usually stay to either 55 or 56 before I move even more north. The location I move to next is up here. Outside, but also inside the mine, you can find so many different creatures, and this is honestly such an amazing location to reach max level. So at this point, you'll most likely also be level 60, and what do you need to do next? Well, you could either start working on your professions, gear up your character so you're ready for raids or dungeons, or maybe even start farming gold. If you like to farm gold, then the Mage is definitely a good choice. And in the description, you can also find a link to my WoW Classic Gold Making Guide. In that guide, I talk about so many different things. For example, what I invest into to make a big profit, and also what I like to farm, and where I farm to make a ton of gold. But yeah, I truly hope you found this guide useful, and that it will help you level up your mage without dying. As always, thanks you so much for watching, and have an amazing day. Peace!